saying that we're live like I always do. So this is the introduction to every live stream with Chris. And I wanna do this like sit back thing again too, like we talked about, like not just being my fat head. Oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. We're live. Okay. Okay, so we got a quick one for you guys today. Um, Title of today's talk or stream or engagement is there's no such thing as mental illness. Do this instead. So Chris, if you want to kind of give an intro of your, how we got here,
Yeah.
um, and then we can segue into, what mental illness is, what's why, how and why it doesn't exist, and then what is the this that people could do instead.
Yeah.
So we'll go into that. So by the end of this, you'll know, by the end of this video, if you stick with us, you'll know why mental illness might be one of the greatest lies of our time. And you'll know what's actually going on that's been labeled mental illness. And you'll have a new way, a new paradigm, a new worldview from which to perceive the struggles you're having in your life. And then from there, we'll share some of what's worked for us, and and then by the end, we'll also share how you can work with Chris and I on one of the few private slots we have because we're doing well. We'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah. So this topic obviously is something not new to either of us, but especially you. It's been something you've been thinking about and talking about for the majority of your life. But this particular stream, I think, is inspired because yesterday I was working with a client who sent me the list of drugs that his psychiatrist put him on are these, five, six drugs that just essentially have turned him into a zombie. Um, and so we got to talking about that and thought we should make a stream on everything you just said regarding mental health, the failure of the medical system and psychiatry and diagnosis of mental illness and so on. Um, so that's a very quick introduction to what inspired this stream.
Yeah, let me say
Um,
something quick about that, Chris. Two things. One is I'm not. Sometime we'll do a stream where we get into all the actual studies and lawsuits that are going on right now, and the statistics about like deaths and serious illnesses, physical real illnesses that are coming about as a result of these drug cocktails that, and sometimes it's not even just the psychiatric drugs, it's interfacing also with whatever other drugs they're getting from the medical system. Now, a lot of these drugs are very new, and even if they've been created in the last 20 years, that's still new, you know? So new that only now is some long-term data starting to emerge and lawsuits accompanying the emergence of that long-term data, and most of it's in nursing homes and old folks' homes where they're starting to see the long-term result of the combination, and not only the combination of the psychiatric meds, but also just the long-term effects of even being on one of the many options of the SSRIs and other drugs. Just so everyone's aware, Chris and I are not doctors. We're not qualified to give medical advice, so we're not doing that here. We're just discussing what's publicly available data, coupled with our experiences of working with clients on these
exactly.
struggles. And in the best of situations, people that come to us, uh, at least from what they've told us, have avoided getting lost into that psychiatric system. Um, and then some people also have told me after they've worked with me that they were able to taper off safely some of these medications that they were on, and they didn't feel like they had a need to go back to them. That's not what we're promising, but I find it fascinating that's a pattern in the work that we do, you know? So I just want to be super clear with everybody. So, um, how this works. But the other thing I want to mention is another client of mine. She just mentioned the other day she was looking into it was some kind of therapy kind of thing, which from the outside, I think it looked like it was, oh, I can do this psychotherapy thing, through my insurance or whatever it was. And as she went through the steps that they told her to go through, she got to a point where there was like this portal, and I'm sure it's running on AI or whatever. But basically, it's you sit and answer a series of questions, and then the computer prepares an assessment, make an assessment. The computer prepares an assessment that already gives their DSM,
Yeah.
basically their DSM diagnosis before they ever see a person.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And the DSM is coupled with drug companies because a lot of times we won't get into this too deep. You see how fired up I get. A lot, a lot of times the diagnoses were created at the same time as the chemical medical solution for them. Because in order for the pharmaceutical companies to get the substance, whatever chemical substance, passed through the FDA rules, it needs to be coupled with a diagnosis.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's the core trick of the pharma and psychiatric union. And so we won't get into it. We can get into all that stuff later. I'm going to have to do a book about this, but the main thing is today, let's just talk about first, what's the problem here? The problem is people have real struggles, whether that's emotional struggles, financial struggles, which lead to feeling stress and pressure, or relationship struggles, the normal struggles of life.
Yep. Two, two things I'll throw in real quick. There's so
Yeah.
much to say about everything you just said, but and we're not going to get into worldviews right now, but implicit in the worldview of diagnosis of the DSM is that you are permanent. You are a done thing. You can't change. And so that system doesn't believe in healing. There might be people, as the worldview, they don't believe in healing. Taking a drug to, you know, to help you cope is like keeping a band-aid on a wound that never gets air and finally gets a scab and then heals and turns back into skin. So I don't think healing, and you can say that this is possible on drugs that numb you from feeling the extent of the dis-ease that you have. That's
Yeah.
one thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is regarding the drugs, because what struck me is, this young man had a kind of psychotic break, went to a psych ward, and he comes home. He showed me the list of drugs. One of the drugs he's on is gabapentin, which they prescribed me years ago for my back pain. And then he's on a sleeping pill. It's like he didn't have trouble sleeping and he doesn't have nerve pain. So why are these drugs? It's like they only have a handful of drugs that they give you. And if you look at them all, essentially they're numbing drugs and they're drugs that keep you calm.
Mhm.
Um, that's not a permanent solution for any problem.
Yeah, I mean, I had clients who suffered from repeated what they call panic attacks. I hate the term because it's not actually a real thing. The experience is real, but the category and the way they diagnose it is not. And it could be a number of different things that lead to that. Okay, fair enough. But what we're talking about here is if there's no medical, and I'm not talking, and psychiatric is not medicine, whether they believe it or not. But if there's no medical source for whatever your struggle is, because there could actually be something like there could be a nutrient deficiency, there could be something going on like meningitis or something, where there's a
Right.
pressure on the spine or on the brain. Okay, that can be dealt with by a medical doctor who's not a psychiatrist or a
Right.
neurologist. Okay, but let's say the realm that we work in is there's no medical reason or there's no medical source behind the struggles that are going on. And the new worldview frame that I wanted to tell you about, if you really want to get the whole thing in deep detail, you need to read the first half and it's sectioned this way in the book of Thomas Satz, Szazz, Thomas Satz's book. the myth of mental illness. And why do I say to only read the first, you only need to read the first half? Because that's where he makes his case that mental illness doesn't exist. And he was a psychiatrist, so you're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that in the second half, I think he makes a lot of critical errors and worldview errors, but that's neither here nor there. So the core issue is mental illness is a category error because the mind is not physical, the mind is metaphysical. And illness is dealing with a dysfunction of something cellular or tissue or organ, a dysfunction. And there are actual medical doctors and procedures, for better or worse, of course. I'm not endorsing that whole system either, but there are medical or naturopathic, whatever, there are procedures to deal with those issues.
So, in other words, what you call mental illness is actually a pattern of character, which is of body, of movement, of posture, even that can be dealt with through the type of exercises and activities and adventures that we offer in our coaching program and so on. Because to call the mind is not divorced from the body. One, two, it's a pattern of behavior that becomes your character. At best, if there's a diagnosis, it would be that. Maybe you have a more, when stress comes, you might go into a more depressive mode of being. That doesn't mean you're now have depressive, whatever they want a DSM
You
number,
have
blah, blah,
depression
blah.
or you have anxiety.
Right.
Uh, and I want you to listen, people to listen, not you, Chris, but people to listen carefully to what we're saying because the knee-jerk reaction is, well, if mental illness doesn't exist, then why am I freaking out? And what I was trying to say before about panic attacks maybe is a good illustration. I had clients who had repeated what they called panic attacks to the point where they would insist on going to the hospital and they would feel like they can't breathe. Kind of like if you're at the front row of some concert and it's like super famous bands and you're getting crushed and you can't breathe. It's that sensation, but well sitting at home or well at the job or well, wherever. And every single client that I've worked with who had recurring panic attacks, we worked on specific muscle groups and gave very specific exercises. And they're extremely simple exercises you could do in less than 5 minutes a day. And every single one of those clients, and I can reach out to them, we can, I need to bring them on at some point, but every single person who just followed up through with doing those exercises never had a panic attack again. Not a reduction in panic attacks, not coping with panic attacks, no drugs necessary, no hospitalization necessary. And these specific exercises can, what do you call that when you interject, but it's like specific term? I forget what it's called, but anyway, when the person feels that state start to come on and they
Yep.
do the exercise and it cancels out the panic attack, okay,
Yep.
that's at the very beginning. But after you do these exercises and release the chronic tension in these muscle groups enough and return a person to at least some semblance of natural breathing, it's impossible for a panic attack to ever happen again.
Right.
And why is that? Well, the reason why that is because prior to that, it's similar to what you said, Chris, there's like a pattern of behavior and reactions that are going on. So as soon as the person starts to feel that muscle group tense up, for example, the
Right.
next reflexive behavior or reaction in the body is for those muscle groups to tighten and then for the breathing to get shallow. And when the breathing's shallow, the brain reads the muscle groups that are going on in the body and says, "Oh, there's an emergency happening right now." Well, how does the brain know there's an emergency happening? Because there's shallow breathing going on and there's tension. So then that loop is going, 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 and then there actually is an emergency because the person is not breathing and there's not enough oxygen getting to the brain. Then the brain says, "Hey, I'm not getting enough oxygen. This is an emergency." And that feedback loop goes and goes. And guess what happens when they go to the hospital? They give them a tranquilizer, which forces the muscles to relax.
which points to what I said as well. There's no such thing as mental. Another reason why there's no such thing as mental illness is because there's always a physical component to everything. Um,
But the reason
okay.
there's no mental illness is because the mind itself cannot be ill. The mind is something metaphysical. The mind can be struggling, the mind can be confused, the mind can be lost, but that's not the same as illness. And this is the great swindle of the psychiatric world. And further, I will challenge anyone who's watching this. And if idiots show up in the comments, make sure that you at least know how to form a proper argument before you leave a comment, and that you be prepared to be invited on a stream to defend whatever you say. Okay, because that's how this works. Flyby, idiot commenters, we're just going to turn you into fodder for the next live stream. But if you actually feel like you have a solid argument, make it in the comments, and we'll invite you on the next stream. But basically, the other myth we need to expose before we get to the solutions here and the transformation that's possible is um, chemical imbalance. This is what sells the drugs. And I guarantee you that there's still psychiatrists repeating this to their patients. And
Oh yeah.
people repeat it. You can see just my post on Facebook from yesterday or the day before. Sure enough, guy shows up in the comments and mentions chemical imbalance as the reason behind depression and anxiety. And
Which there's no data for
basically,
whatsoever. There's
I
no
started
evidence that
researching. There's not even one study. I thought,
no,
okay, there's probably like at least some big
no,
pharma studies, right? Like that they
no.
engineered. No, there was never a single study. It was just an inference
Right.
casually made by two researchers who later said, no, that's not what it
Right.
is. And the pharmaceutical industry ran with it. And they've admitted both in public documents and in leaked whistleblower documents. They said this was all what we needed for marketing these drugs.
I mean, it's why SSRI, because there's no, to be more specific, there's no link between serotonin, one example, and depression necessarily. And that's why SSRIs literally have an equal chance of working as anything else does. It's
But you know
just like,
what else? You know what there is a link between? You know what
mm,
there fucking is a link between that's been demonstrated in the studies done by the pharmaceutical companies themselves that they tried to suppress, that long-term SSRI use for depression is linked to more severe depression down the road. It's
probably
linked to higher
suicide.
suicide rates. It's
Yeah,
linked to it. So this is the crazy thing. Those drugs are linked to worsening of the symptoms that they're used to treat. Now, again, we'll do other streams where we get into the raw data of all this stuff for all the naysayers and haters out there, so they can choke on it. But basically, like yeah, where I mentioned at the beginning, the cocktail of all these drugs combined, and then mixed with the person is drinking alcohol and all these other things that you can't control. Basically, they're just starting to see that it's one other study I'll mention, then we'll move on to the solutions. Uh, this other study was they did a study on ADHD, people who had been diagnosed with ADHD, and the claim they tried to make was that ADHD causes over throughout the course of your life causes holes in the brain.
yeah,
And then some other guy went and dug into the studies. They only did studies on people who were on Adderall or whatever the
yeah,
other speed drugs they give to people who are on ADHD. So then when they expanded the study beyond, they had to have a group who never took those. Well, the only group who had the holes in their heads were the ones that were on the Adderall.
of course.
But look how they tried to frame it. You see how they tried to, you know what I mean? It's super sinister, dude. Sinister. So these are
Yeah,
the people, if you go get diagnosed by a machine now, you're going to get diagnosed by AI.
yep,
And then you're going to go in. And once that has diagnosed you, unless you're dealing with a really high class professional, and a high class professional would not let a machine diagnose you, by the way, unless you're dealing with a high class professional who happens to be a psychiatrist, of which there are very few, then that person is going to view you through the lens of the diagnosis the whole time they know you. They will never see you as anything but that category.
yeah. I mean, it speaks to how we view people in the world that we pay psychiatrists like $500,000 a year. and and their job is only to, give you just a particular concoction of drugs, that we value that, like this kind of chemical, scientist of the brain, which is a completely, at least a psychologist might actually learn
It's
some
not a scientist of the brain. They
relational.
didn't study the brain.
I don't understand, right?
Psychiatrists don't study
It's
the brain.
it's fake, right? It's pretend. There's nothing sophisticated about that. I mean, most of the doctors you talk to don't even understand basic nutrition, and yet they have 8-year degrees that they, anyways. Okay, where do we go from here?
So, see, we just identified our next year's worth of content right there. I mean, it's so great, dude. And it's good that we're doing this.
I'm gonna go and look into exactly what a psychiatrist, like the education that they go
Yeah,
through.
let's get into that. Let's dig into it.
Yeah.
Let's expose the whole works. So basically, the best possible scenario is that, and not that Chris and I can help every person with every issue, but we do have a knack for helping people get out of what I call. So, what is the real problem? We need to say, what is the real problem? The real problem is you're having a struggle with life and you don't know how to get through it, whatever that struggle might be, whether it's burnout, whether it's chronic tension, or whether it's you're feeling choked up, or you can't let go, or you have to navigate transitions like a relationship falling apart, or career change, or whatever it is. Okay. You're navigating a problem in life. And what all those problems have in common is a person is responding to the contents of their imagination as if it's more real than the actuality of what's going on around them. And why do I say that? Because what's going on around you, once your identity is outside of the imagination and present and aware of what's actually going on in the body and around you, then you're in the driver's seat. You can see, okay, the car needs repair. You can actually take steps to solve or to stabilize whatever the issue is. But if you're responding to the contents of the imagination as if those are more real than reality, then the solutions, this is why it doesn't help to read 2000 self-help books or esoteric books or whatever, because it's all taking place on inside the imagination. So then it's just quotes and all these quotes you see your friends post, or oh, it's a simulation, or oh, you're not going crazy, you're waking up. How does that help anybody? It's just more words piled on words, and it creates an ideal that you're trying to strive for. So now it adds another problem on top of it. So what we do generally, and we use a million different tactics to do this, is get out of the hellish snow globe of the imagination so that you can see, okay, there's what's going on inside the mind, but that's not me. And you can feel a sense of being grounded, even if you're experiencing pain, even if you're going through struggles. And you can start to come back home to the body and feel a sense of complete aliveness, which will include pain and suffering. Yes, it will. But you'll know what it is. Oh, okay, I got to deal with my knee. It's hurting me. That's a real thing, but it's not a mental illness because oh, well, I have to deal with this. But if you start imagining catastrophes, what if I lose my leg? Oh my God. Now you're not able to deal with anything. So what Chris and I do, we help people get out of that hell realm of the imagination, come back home to the body and to what's actually going on. And then from there, we can, with you, help you craft solutions to the actual issues that you're struggling with. Most other solutions, most other self-help, and all these fake medicalized psychiatric so-called solutions uh, mask the problem or make the problem worse or put you into some whole other psychiatric hospital adventure, which is a lot harder to navigate and a lot harder to get out of and get clean of.
Yeah, I guess maybe to expand a bit on that, there's a whole conversation to be had, perhaps about trauma regarding that, and also actual problems. But to your point, the actual problems, to look at them plainly and not fantasize about the disaster that's going to bring them, it helps you deal with them. It might be uncomfortable, it might be easier to avoid them, but really the reaction to the pain is worse than actually dealing with the actual pain, right? So maybe your
Yeah.
life is a mess. Maybe your life is a mess,
Yeah.
and that's why you're depressed or anxious or so on. Um, and so that's what you have to look at too. And maybe there's some things you have to solve in the real world that will, you know, solve the mental dis-ease that you're going through in the moment.
Yeah.
So that's why we can't give you a system, a framework, because your problem could be completely different from somebody who maybe has some trauma and has this pattern that they're stuck in, that leads to some type of panic attack or something, whereas somebody is in the middle of financial issues and that's the cause of their anxiety. Both would have a completely different um, way about going about healing or solving the issue, right?
Yeah. It's not one size fits all. But what is one size fits all? What is common to almost all of the struggles in life that we have to deal with up front that's going to make all the other things easier to deal with is that most people are spending, let's say you have one, let's say there's 100% of calories or energy you have for each day. And when that's out, then you have to go to sleep, you have to recharge. You know that, if you might know when you get there where you just can't stand, you need to have some time alone, whatever. You run out of juice for the day.
Mhm.
Most people are spending 60% or more of the energy they have for a day staying tense, and its chronic tension is outside of awareness and
Right,
cycling in the mind, which a lot of the scrolling assists you in staying in there, staying stuck in there. So they're creating tension in the body and it's out of awareness. So we need to bring that back into awareness, and the awareness will cause the body to start to relax on its own. And then, second, they're creating suffering in the mind, what I call fake suffering. Why is it fake suffering? Because it has no ground. It's not real. It's not based on anything.
right,
Real suffering might be like God forbid, someone you love that you rely on dies. You're going to go through a period of suffering related to that. But that's real. That's something you can go through, and there's
right,
ways to do it. But fake suffering is never ending.
right,
So that's what most people are spending 50, 60, 70% of their life force of their, and I don't mean anything mystical by this. I mean the amount of energy you have to get through a day.
right.
Most of that energy is burned up staying tense. So imagine if I sit here like this all day and I've got to clean my house, and I'm working against my muscle tension.
Yep.
Most of my effort is not going toward the things I need to do. Most of my effort is going toward staying tense. And then most of my mental effort is not focused on what's actually going on. It's being consumed by fear and doubt and shame and all these other things. So it's not even here to do the things I need to do. So that's the core. That's something that almost everybody needs. So that's what we do with that. We
Yeah.
help get out of the head, stop creating the fake suffering of the mind, break apart and stop the chronic tension in the body, which feels like you're getting superpowers because now your attention span can expand again, like it was when you were a kid, and you could focus on one thing all day long, and your the effort that you're spending on staying tense, suddenly it's like you just got this whole reserve of energy.
Yep.
So
Yep. So that would be a kind of general. Maybe some people need more undoing work than others. Other people need less, but that would be a general thing is to free up energy that's being used inefficiently to fend off invisible problems, which is in a sense what trauma is. And of
yeah,
course, there's a big uh,
spectrum.
variety
Yeah,
spectrum of trauma and it's not to downplay trauma. If you've had
no,
a
not at all.
shock point when you were a kid that put you were in extreme danger,
Yeah,
it's not real anymore, but it's very understandable why your body still reacts to it as if it's going on now,
yeah.
right?
None of what we say is meant to diminish people's actual struggles. This is actually meant to tell you
To
there are
empower.
real struggles in life, and we're here to help you actually start to deal with those.
Yep.
Whereas the all this fake, this medicalization of life's struggles is the opposite of help. And often it's extremely harmful. And I know personal examples. even that brings me pain to remember this one friend of mine, and I'll tell the whole story about her. I've told you before, but about my friend Anne, Lord have mercy. And
Bef-
it
Before
brings,
you do that, I have
I'm not
about
going to tell
two.
it now. I'm just saying
Oh,
it's
okay.
another time. But I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying we both know
Oh, yeah.
with, with personal examples. And this was a woman who went through all the what I call fake seeking all over the world, the ashrams and psychotherapists. And she was on some really serious cocktail of psych meds. And her solution was to go off herself eventually after going through all the solutions. And part of that is what drove me. I didn't realize it till like a few years ago. I was like, wait, this was the key moment for me. Uh, Part of that is what propelled me through all the seeking, and that I could see how much of it was so bullshit,
Yeah.
and propelled me through to provide real solutions for people because I didn't know how to help her, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that this stuff is very real and very painful, and that's why, we're pretty serious about this. So Chris, I know Chris has to go and I got to get going as well, but what I want to say is, so in light of all this, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of us, if the Lord is willing, on here on the live streams, is we're opening spots, probably about 5 or 10. We need to see how many people we want to handle at a time. But basically, we're opening spots to work with one-on-one, or two-on-one. Basically, work one-on-one though with us and with probably we'll start with about 5 or 6, allowing 5 or 6 people and see how much more we can take on. But yeah, we do that in about 3 month chunks. But the way that works is first you just get on a call with us, and then we assess, find out what's going on in your specific situation, see if we can help you, and if you like hanging out and talking with us, that's kind of number one. And then from there, we put together a program specifically for you, tailored to your actual life struggles. And the reason we have a minimum of 3 months is because this is really deep and really high level work, and you've got to put in the effort over at least 3 months to get the kind of results that Chris and I are capable of helping you get. And how do we know that? Because of all the people we worked with who do 1 or 2 sessions, they might as well go get a massage or do something else. We're solving things at a much deeper level, at a root level, so that the rest you're kind of you have a chance at getting the rest of your life back out of all this medicalization of your life struggles. So that's what we're talking about. Hopefully, maybe Chris can say it more eloquently than I can, and then we're going to sign off.
I think that's good. I mean, 3 months is like introduction. And that could give you some momentum. It could make things clear. It could, but like for practitioners, for people who want to go further, like a year is
Yeah.
really, and that's kind of who we're looking for. But we know that we still have things to offer in a 3 month container. But it's kind of also trying to weed out people to who want to stick around and become, practitioners for which a year is like, you know, takes 8 years to become a psychiatrist, and look what they're doing, right? Like we just said. No. So yeah, that sounds good. I got a lot more to say about that, but unfortunately I have to run today. But I think that was good.
Yeah, there's going to be a
And
lot more. This was a great one, and as always, it's awesome to be here with you, Chris. And I just feel like super grateful, and both for you and for the fact that we have these tools and these gifts and the ability to make a stand and actually help people, hopefully before they ever get sucked into that whole other system. But also for people who have been victimized by that system, there's, that we can offer some kind of help.
yeah, I mean, and you can see the connection between mental illness, people who are sensitive and do come up with these issues. They're usually the seeking types as well. And so they're going to be seekers. And then they can fall into that thing, like your friend who probably adopted some disassociative Buddhist practices,
Yep.
because that's another way to leave the body and not
Yep.
actually deal with the problem and create a worldview that justifies it until you're even more confused and
Yep.
lost, right? That's
Yep.
a whole nother conversation. But
Yep.
yeah. So, all right. Good
Cool,
stuff.
everybody. Nice to see all of y'all. Thanks for being here on the stream. If you got questions, you got comments, you got hate, you got love, leave it in the comments section. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with me through the website. Send me a message on one of the 3,475 different ways of conveying text And then Chris and I will get you on our schedule. This is all organic, you know, we don't like to have everything be, there's no chat bots, there's no idiotic madness. We're old school and we're going to always be old school. So just reach out, get in touch with myself or Chris, and then we'll schedule a time for you to meet with both of us, and then we'll craft the program for you. And one promise I want to make at the very end here is whether we decide to work together or not, by the end of that call, it's mine and Chris's goal for you to at least have clarity on your situation and know what the next steps are for you. And if we know of a couple exercises or things that we can give you that are going to help you get the ground back under your feet, we're going to give you that on the call. Okay.
And even if we're not the right fit for you, we'll send you to where, you know, to help you. Yeah, good stuff, man. Okay. And
Okay.
we're doing another one tomorrow on
Yep. Tomorrow's the
NPCs.
NPCs. Yeah, yeah. How to
And
not be
so,
an, how to not be an NPC. Yeah.
yeah, and how that relates to everything we just talked about, because it's all related. But
Yep.
okay. Peace, brother, and
All right.
everybody else.
God
Adios.
bless.